Welcome again to Joe Stunner Boxing. At the weekend, we've got an all-British showdown between two guys who certainly one of them is world-class, which is JOSHUA Buatsi, and a guy who's sort of knocking on the door of being world-class, which is Dan Azeez. Now, this is a rescheduled fight. It's for the, like I say, British and Commonwealth light heavyweight titles, and it was cancelled previously, back end of last year, because Azeez picked up an injury. There were a lot of people that said he wasn't injured. It was cancelled because ticket sales were not doing as well as they should have done, or they'd hoped for. It's going to be on Sky. Buatsi is promoted by Boxer, Ben Shalom's Boxer. And a lot of people have said, well, this is really a step back for Buatsi, because you would think he would want to be fighting for world titles by now at this point of his career. Instead, he's fighting for the British and Commonwealth titles. Nothing wrong with that. You know, those are good titles. But yeah, I tend to agree. I mean, Buatsi is now 30. As you know, he's undefeated, 17 wins, no draws, no defeats, 13 knockouts. He's a 6'2" orthodox fighter. So he's nice and tall for the weight. Azeez is a shorter fighter. He's also orthodox, but I think he's about 5'10", but he's also older. He's 34, and this is he's kind of a late bloomer, Azeez, and some would say he's an overachiever. He's got 20 wins with 13 KOs, no draws, no defeats. But let's get back to Buatsi for a moment here, because he had that move from Matchroom to Boxer, and am I right in saying the Craig Richards fight was under Sky, and that was in May of 2022. Since then, he's only fought once, which was against Pavel Stepien, and he beat him over 10 rounds. He beat him, I thought, comfortably. I don't think Stepien was ever really in the fight. He made some of the rounds competitive, but Buatsi, to me, I think a lot of people have agreed with this assessment. He looked kind of flat. He looked unmotivated and as if he had other things on his mind. And he didn't fight badly, but he didn't fight with much urgency or spite. And that may be because Stepien was a level below him, so he didn't really have to go through the gears. But it wasn't like an eye-catching performance. And that, I think, you know the old saying, you're only as good as your last fight. I think that comes from the last fight being the one that sticks in people's minds. And also with all this out of the ring stuff, there's a court case pending regarding, between Matchroom and Boxer regarding Buatsi's contract with Matchroom, which Matchroom are claiming was broken. I think that they're claiming he had one last fight or one more fight on the contract. And there are actually rules. You're not meant to approach someone if they're under contract with another promoter. But as far as Azeez is concerned, I mean, he has, again, it looks like he's overachieved, because he stopped Rocky Fielding in 8 rounds. Thomas Faure, is that the word? Faure? Is that the name? F-A-U-R-E, Faure? Frenchman, I think. And that was in France. He won the vacant European title against Thomas Faure with a 12th round stoppage. And then his last fight was in Italy against a guy called Khalid Greba. And that was just an 8-round points win. But so in his last 3 fights, he's fought in Italy, France, and Britain. So he doesn't mind travelling, and I always like that. I like to see that in a fighter, because it means they're picking up experiences that can be used later on, mainly in learning how to deal with, not just travelling, fighting abroad, but fighting in front of the opposition's fans, the experience of having to do all that, of having to do being a road warrior in a sense. When you step up to fight someone, even if it's in your home country, you can draw on that experience of being the underdog, of being the outsider, and handle it. Because everybody feels apprehension, maybe nerves, maybe even fear, but it's how you deal with it. And Azeez is someone who has been only too happy to, you know what they say nowadays, you know, he looks for all the smoke, you know. He doesn't mind it. I'll travel, I'll fight anyone, you know. He seems like a very mature fighter, even though he started relatively late. I mean, he was 30, he's 34 now. He began his professional career in 2017. He fought on the small hall circuit. Again, that's a great way of learning the trade, especially if you haven't got a big amateur background, which Azeez hasn't. And he's got a win over Shakan Pitters over 12 rounds. That was back in 2022 in Liverpool, I think it was. He beat Reece Cartwright in 8 rounds. So Hosea Burton, by the way, well, that was a big win. He stopped him in 7 rounds, knocked him out. That was for the British title. But Azeez, considering his late start and lack of amateur career, he's won British, Commonwealth and European belts. I think he even won the area belt earlier on in his career, Southern area, light heavy belt. So he's really done things the proper way, the old school way, the way that people, particularly of my age, would say is the right way. Area level, English, maybe British, Commonwealth, European. That's how you learn the trade, pick up those belts. You know, people like Daniel Dubois did it, although he was thrown in way too early against Joe Joyce. Billy Joe Saunders did it that way. I'm thinking of recent fighters, relatively recent fighters. And I think that's really, and the travelling, couple that with the travelling, I think that's really, you know, put him in a very good position mentally and in terms of, you know, knowing his style, knowing what he can and can't do. Because he is not the most naturally talented guy. He's quite athletic. He's extremely strong, very powerful, sort of models Marvin Hagler as his idol, which is fine. Well, you know, Hagler's one of my favourite fighters, magnificent fighter. So, but he does have a certain, at times he puts pressure on well, but he can have that sort of crude caveman demeanour about him where he just wants to sort of smother you and swamp you and, you know, impose his will and his physical strength. And that's good. He's had great success at doing that. Now, Buatsi, of course, a former Olympian, is the opposite because Buatsi had a very long amateur career, successful one. He's beaten people like Ricardo Bolotniks, but he hasn't really, you know, he's beaten those sort of B- fighters, you know. He hasn't really beaten anyone of world class. And this is, considering he turned pro in 2017, same year as Azeez, you'd expect him to have beaten world class, you know, top 12 fighters by now, or at least given them a run for their money. In fact, you would expect him to have had a world title fight, and he was offered a world title fight. Was it against Bivol? I think it was, when he was at Matchroom, but he turned it down. Now, I think his career, although the first 2/3 of it, he was doing the right thing, even though the opposition wasn't great, he seems to have lost his way. He seems kind of all at sea almost. And again, people are saying, and I think it does hold water, this argument, that to fight for the British and Commonwealth titles, you know, 6.5, 7 years into your career is a little surprising. I go along with that idea. There's no doubt that Buatsi is far more skilled, far more well schooled than Azeez. But of course, I get the feeling that Azeez will really be up for this fight and he'll come in at his, you know, optimum weight. Well, he's 12.7, but he'll make the weight correctly, is what I mean. There won't be any weight issues. I don't think he'll have any confidence issues. I think he's got the bit between his teeth and he's chomping away and he's thinking, I'm coming for you. You know, he's motivated. Buatsi, I've been trying to sort of read where he's at, sort of mentally, his psyche, but it's very difficult because he's kind of a quiet guy. And in recent interviews, he's come across as being very quiet, which is his, you know, default setting almost. Hasn't given too much away, which he never does. In the past, in the ring, he showed some real spite. He's actually quite hot-headed. He's almost got in trouble with referees in the past for arguing with them in a couple of fights. And he's got a nasty streak to him, like a lot of quiet people. You know, still waters run deep is the expression. And I get the feeling with Buatsi that's the case. However, if you're feeling vulnerable, I'm not talking inside the ring, but outside the ring, because of issues, maybe the legal issue or the fact he hasn't fought enough, he's been a little bit inactive, or, you know, I wonder how he's getting on in training. I don't know. I don't have any inside information. But I do wonder whether he's going to be mentally, psychologically, emotionally right on it, because he's got the better skills. He's slick. He hits hard. His defense is pretty decent, although he does like a bit of a scrap, so he can leave himself open. His footwork's, I think, you know, very, very good. He always keeps his shape. You know, he's a good, fluid, well-schooled fighter who should, if he's at his absolute best mentally and physically, be able to control Azeez's aggression and strength. It's a difficult one to predict this. It's very difficult. There's been a little bit of supposed beef between them. They seem to get on very, very well prior to the cancelled fight. But I think Buatsi has sort of implied that the injury wasn't real, and that it was a fake injury because tickets weren't selling, or, you know. Azeez has sort of taken umbrage with this, isn't quite happy, as you would imagine. So he's thinking that there's a little bit of back and forth between them, a little bit of not nastiness, but I don't think it runs particularly deep. I don't think there's any real beef between these two guys. I just think it's two guys who've got to make weight, who've got a fight coming up against each other, and they're irate, as you're going to be, as most fighters are when you've got to make weight, you're dieting and all that stuff. So I don't think there's any real friction between them, not really out of the ring, or not personally. It's not personal. Who do I think will win? It really depends on what Buatsi turns up. If the Buatsi who is at his best and the spiteful, focused Buatsi turns up, I think he'll beat Azeez. I think he'll outbox him and beat him up, and I think Azeez will have his moments. But I think his aggression, his come-forward aggression, Buatsi has the skills to turn that against him and make him walk onto stuff, walk onto counters, get beaten up as he's coming in, have to take 2 or 3 punches to land one, and so on. But it depends where Buatsi's at. Azeez, as I say, I think he'll be on it. Definitely confident. Definitely bring his A game. It's a difficult one to predict, but I mean, I've really got a feeling Azeez could spring an upset if Buatsi's not on it. Oh, what the hell? Let's go for it. I think I only do previews of fights I'm not sure about, because I think they're the most interesting ones. But while I can see Buatsi, like I say, beating up Azeez if he's on his A game and really doing his thing, I'm going to go for the upset. I think Azeez will outpoint Buatsi. I think his physicality will kind of eventually break through in the second half of the fight. I think he'll have to walk through hell to do it, but I can see him getting close to Buatsi and maybe springing an upset on points. I'll go for points. I think Buatsi might look a bit ragged around the edges. I think the inactivity will bug him. I think Azeez, even at 34, is in the ascendancy, looking really, really good. He's overachieving massively. His dedication, his determination, I think, is palpable. And I think Buatsi, with what's going on outside the ring, his mind might not be fully on it. And when you get two guys fighting at this level, the margin of difference, the margin of error is very, very slight. I think Azeez can outwork Buatsi maybe over the second half of the fight and pull out a points win. So I'm going for Azeez on points. Let me know what you think. Leave your comments below. What do you think? Do you agree with me or not? Do you see an upset? Or perhaps you think, no, Buatsi's got too much of everything, which I can understand that argument. But leave your comments below. Also, if you're new to the channel, please subscribe. And yeah, like the video as well if you liked it. Thank you for your time. I always appreciate your time. You've got 100 things you could be doing instead you're watching my video, so that's great. But anyway, comments below, and take care of yourselves. Looking forward to this one. Catch you later. Bye for now.